James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, one of the best, most well-renowned self-improvement books that has been written, is wrong about behavior change. And here's why. Look, I lost 50 kilos. I spent the last 7 years obsessing over fat loss and behavior change because in order to lose weight, you need to change your behavior. And I've read many books. But recently, I've come under the realization that what most people say about changing behavior is a load of toss. And in this video, I'm going to explain why. Let's get into it. So, James Clear, in the book, says that in order to change your behavior, you have to change your identity. And to be fair, this is something I actually agree with, right? Okay? You have to change who you are, and as a result of changing who you are, your habits change, and as a result of your habits change, you get the outcome that you want. Okay? And what he says is wrong about most people setting goals is that they'll say things like, I want to lose weight. And this is why people that go on diets are hugely unsuccessful, because they don't change their identity. And so they're basically operating with this new set of rules with an underlying identity that doesn't reflect the desired reality. And as a result of that, they can't sustain the results for maybe even 2 weeks. And they lose weight, they don't keep it off, they come out of the diet and they say, oh, I can't stick to this or whatever, and it's this endless cycle of frustration. I've been through it myself, and it is pretty upsetting actually, because when you're in that state, you don't actually understand why your identity isn't changing. And this is where I think James Clear is wrong, and I'm going to explain it in a minute why. But now I do understand why completely, and it's so much easier than what he says, which is why I want to share it in this video with such a bold claim. The premise of this identity first approach is that you can't rely on motivation, right? Because what the world says is go on a diet, and I use weight loss as an example because I'm very familiar with it, and be disciplined, take action, go when you don't feel like it, eat the foods, and then you'll eventually like them, all these random things. But motivation is kind of like going to a restaurant when you're really hungry. So when you're really motivated to do a weight loss journey, is like going to a restaurant when you're really hungry. And as a result of being really hungry, you order so much food, and then you eat too much and you feel really sick and you're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And that's why people that are really motivated to go on a diet, they basically take things way too far, and then they're like, oh, I can't do that anymore. And this is where it's really flawed, because you take things way too unsustainable, and I've done it before myself, so I'm not saying this from a place of like pedestalness. I'm just saying it because I've experienced it firsthand, that taking extreme action is like eating too much food and feeling sick, basically. But a better approach is to change our identity. As a result of changing our identity, our habits change. Because our habits have changed, our outcomes change. And it's a very simple framework, right, to understand that. But this is where he's wrong, because he basically suggests that in order to change your identity, you have to take action. And he says, basically in your life, create small wins in your life that reflect the new identity that you want to have. So maybe if you want to lose weight and you want to be in shape, you want to be healthy, and you're doing like no steps per day, he would say, okay, tomorrow do 1,000 steps. The next day do 2,000 steps. The next day do 3,000 steps. Maybe if you have a Greggs sausage roll for breakfast, swap it with an apple. And over time, as you rack up these small wins, you change your identity. And as a result of changing your identity, your habits change, and then the outcomes change. But like what he's saying is basically, in order to change your identity, you have to take action, right? The only thing that is a big flaw with this is that 90% of our actions are driven by our subconscious. So like, if 90% of our actions are driven by our subconscious, then how are we meant to take action and create these small wins if we don't even know what the actions that we're taking are, right? And like an example of this is perhaps how fast that we eat, right? Like, if you're really stressed, and I'm going to be talking about stress a little bit more later on in the video and how it impacts our life quite a lot when we don't even realize it. But if we're really stressed unconsciously because we've got an email from our boss saying, all right, you need to do this work, or in Friday you've got this deadline, and then lunchtime rolls by and you're like in this kind of frantic hurry because you're feeling a sense of stress and you eat really quickly, how are you meant to create a small win out of that when you're not even conscious of the actions that you're taking? And this is why I think James Clear is flawed, because in order to make the changes that you need to make, you have to become conscious of the unconscious. I think that making small wins is similar to changing the hardware on your phone. So I have like a Google Pixel, right? And it's like the 7. If I were to get the Google Pixel 10, it would be great, only if the software upgraded too, right? But I think that if you were to get a Google Pixel 10 and keep the software of a Google Pixel 7 or Google Pixel 6, whatever mine is, largely the experience would be the same because nothing would feel new. Everything would just be the same with just maybe like a slightly bigger screen or something. And so I think when you take these actions, you're kind of looking at everything from such a unconscious perspective because you're only looking at the things that you know that you're doing, that even though you think that you're making changes, you're not really making any changes. And so that's why I think it's like getting a new phone but having the software of a really old phone at the same time. So an example of this from my experience as well is like, I had a coach in 2022 and in 2023, I've had multiple coaches. And every time I've signed up to a coach, I've been pretty obedient with what they say. I track my calories, I do my workouts, I do my steps, and I'm racking up these small wins, as James Clear says, in order to change my behavior. And I lose weight, the scale goes down, I get the goal that I want to get to. But internally, I felt exactly the same. Internally, I felt the same sense of I need more, the same sense of lack, the same sense of unworthiness, the same sense of insecurity, the same sense of, oh, I'm still a bit too fat. And there is a great book called Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. I'll write it up here so you can take a note of it, because I think everyone should read it. But in the book, he explains, he's a plastic surgeon, right? And he explains that some people that he does surgery on, some of his patients, don't end up changing how they feel even after the surgery. So they might have like a nose job. After the nose job, they still have the same unconscious thoughts and feelings, even if they've changed their appearance. And I think the same thing happened with me, where on the material side of things, so my body, the way that I looked, things changed massively, but internally I felt the same way. And so even though I was racking up small wins and I was changing my behavior and I was building these good habits, like I still hadn't changed the software. And so I was still experiencing a day-to-day life that was exactly the same, regardless of the weight that I was at. And so even though I was taking action in the direction I wanted to go, I still hadn't changed my identity, right? And this is where I think James Smith is wrong, is because I think our identity is very much related to our emotional state. And our past experiences with the greatest negative emotional charge are the most easily remembered. So an example of this for me, I went to my granddad's brother's house for lunch. And we were getting served lunch, some rotli shag. That's like a chapati and curry if you're not Indian. And I'm just gonna say my auntie. My auntie came round and she came round with the chapatis. And with the chapatis, you can put some butter on, or you can put ghee on. And she asked me like, oh, do you want some ghee? And at the time I was like, yeah, hell yeah. I was a fat kid, you know? So I was like, yeah, I'll have some. And then she looked at me, she was like, you're getting quite big, maybe you shouldn't have any ghee. And I still remember that to this day, right? And that is just proof that like the experiences that we have negative emotions towards or result in an experience of negative emotions are the most easily remembered. And that's why people can remember where they were when they had 9/11, because that caused kind of this sense of shock, this negative emotion, right? And this has been tested in a study in 1999 by a guy called Haman. And what he found was that people they had more amygdala activation. So he used a brain scanner on two groups of people. One was shown positive photos, one was shown negative photos. Negative photos were like disasters, heartbreak, all these random things. Positive photos were like families enjoying ice cream and stuff. The negative photos, the people that are showed negative photos had more amygdala activation, which is associated with memory recall, than the people with positive photos. And so that shows that, and is proof that we are creatures that remember negative experiences more. And so if we're remembering these experiences more with negative emotions, then what does that mean? Well, it means that later on in life, when we're having thoughts, we're more likely to trigger our memories with negative experiences. And as a result of that, we're going to be more likely to trigger the same negative emotions. And so even if we do take action, even if we do lose weight or change our appearance, if we're still triggering these negative experiences, these negative memories, we're still not going to be able to change our identity, right? Because we're going to still experience life in a similar way. And I think this is what happened with me, where I associated action with improving my life and feeling more confident, but that feeling of confidence never actually came. And so as a result of that, I just became so obsessed and ended up taking relentless action, and then ended up losing weight and gaining it back, losing weight and gaining it back. And so this is why I'm so passionate about the fact that identity change isn't actually about taking action at all. And so I think a better approach, and I'm going to rub everything out now. I hope you're writing notes, but I think a better approach is to become, I need to get a new pen, emotionally independent of the outcome, because that is actually real identity change. Okay? So like, for example, you might be thinking to yourself like, I want to lose weight, or I want to get a better job, or I want to increase my salary, or I want to get into a relationship, or I want to, I don't know, buy something. And the thing is, if we are not emotionally independent of the outcome, we will take obsessive action towards achieving that outcome because we are so dependent on it to feel a certain way. And so an example of this for me was like, I was trying to lose weight and I thought if I take action, I'm going to become more confident. And what I did was I just took relentless action, right? Like I literally became so obsessed. I was so stressed, I think, because emotional dependence is stress, because you're in a negative emotional state. You're trying to move to a positive emotional state. But because you're in this negative emotional state, that is correlated with stress. And if you think about what stress is, right? Stress is just our response to threats in the environment. So imagine a hunter-gatherer, my guy Tom, he's walking around looking for food for the tribe, lion jumps out, he's now stressed. And it's a physiological response. Your pupils will dilate, your heart rate will go up, your hunger will go down, your respiratory rate will go up. So all of these things will happen. And what happens is you get focused on everything in the material world because you're trying to predict and plot everything. Okay, you're trying to say, if I go that way, then am I going to live? And what you're really doing is actually predicting the worst case scenario. Because if you predict the worst case scenario, then you're going to put yourself in the best position to escape. But the thing is, in the modern world, there's no lions around and we just get stressed about random things. And so, for example, I would feel negative emotions. As a result of that negative emotion, I would then read online and it would say, take action to change your identity to get the outcome that you want. So then I would take action. But then because I was taking action, I would get stressed about the action because I was emotionally dependent on the outcome. And what happens when you're stressed? Well, you're focused on the environment. You're focused on the worst case scenario. And so I would literally think to myself, oh, like if I don't lose weight by this time, I'm fucked. So then I would lower calories. I would look at my scale and be like, oh, I haven't lost weight today. I need to do something different. Like all of these random things that would come up in my head that weren't necessary because of stress. And that would lead to obsessive action, excessive importance. And as a result of that, guess what? I would lose weight for a bit, but then I'd bounce back up. And so this is the point. Action isn't the way. I wanted to lose weight to be more confident, but that emotional dependence was the exact reason why I never reached my goal. And a way better approach is to become emotionally independent. And I'm going to explain in a minute how you can do this quite easily. But like, if you think about it, right? Once you're emotionally independent, it means that you're already feeling confidence, worthy, valuable, grateful, and all of these things, despite you achieving the goal. Instead of the positive emotional state hanging in the balance of you achieving a goal, you now already feel the emotional states, and as a result of that, the goal is achieved already. And if you think about it, right, if you become emotionally independent, what it means is you're already feeling confident, you're already feeling no stress, you're already feeling happy, you're already feeling worthy, you're already feeling valuable. And so you don't actually care about the goal as much. And so then you don't take as much obsessive action. And so, although I do think action is important, and I get what James Clear is saying, I think there's a step before that in order to change your identity, because someone with the identity of being in shape is already happy and confident and worthy and valuable, or feel valuable and grateful of their body and their health. And so before you take any action, you have to feel all of these things in order to change your identity, okay? And this is where I think James Clear is kind of wrong, because he says, oh yeah, like you need to change your identity by taking small actions, but why don't you just change your emotional state? Because if you're emotionally in a place where you already have what the desired reality is going to give you, and you become emotionally independent, then the desired reality will manifest itself. And so like, say if you're grateful for your body, you're grateful for your health, you're in a place of self-love, you look in the mirror and you're happy with yourself, chances are you're going to want to eat healthy. Chances are you're going to want to do exercise. Chances are you're going to want to go for a walk, right? So you're going to take the actions as a byproduct of changing your internal emotional state. And that's why I think James Clear is wrong about behavior change. Because behavior change and long-term behavior change doesn't come as a result of taking action, but it comes as a result of changing your emotions. And I'm going to explain how you can do this right now. So there are two methods and two levels of this that I want to share with you. So level one, meditation. So this is like if you're a beginner, and still very powerful and very important to do. But the reason why meditation is so powerful is because you are having all these thoughts, right? And you're having emotions, and they're kind of wired in your brain. Your brain has billions of neurons, and the connections between the neurons that have been fired together over and over again are well wired together, and so they're very easily fired again. And so throughout your life, if you're in this stress state, in this negative emotional state because of your past experiences, then it's very easy for you to have the same thoughts over and over again, the same emotions over and over again, and you're kind of just living in a familiar past and a predictable future, right? Because you wake up in the morning, you see an email from your boss, you start thinking about what you need to do on Thursday. As a result of that, next thing you know, you look in the mirror and you're having a thought about some random thing that, your thoughts have just gone wild. And you're just having these exact same visualizations, the exact same emotions. And so as a result of that, the behaviors are the same. As a result of that, the past is the same, the future is the same, and you're just living in the same reality. Nothing changes. When you meditate, you're putting yourself in the present moment. And so you're not thinking about something in the past, you're not thinking about some memory, you're not thinking about some future based on the memory, but you're really calming down and you're slowing down. And the way that you do this is very simple, right? You focus on your breath. So you have one breath in, one breath out, one breath in, one breath out, one breath in. You can do through your nose, come out your mouth, focusing on your nose, focusing on your belly, focusing on your mouth, like whatever part you want to. You can do whatever, it doesn't really matter. You can count. You're going to have some thoughts. And this is going to be about the past or the future, past or the future, past or the future. And you're going to have maybe multiple of these at the beginning before you become the advanced practitioner, which I'm going to share the method in a minute. And so what happens here is you then catch yourself and you're like, oh shit, like I was meant to be meditating, I was meant to focus on my thoughts, I was meant to be in the position where I was not thinking about the past and the future. And so you bring yourself back. And so you go from unconscious to conscious, unconscious to conscious. And that is a win. And that's a really great thing, because the more that you do that, the more that you win, the more you become conscious of the unconscious, and you can then displace negative thoughts throughout the day. And as a result of displacing negative thoughts, you displace negative emotions. As a result of displacing negative emotions, you start to feel the emotions of your desired reality. And as a result of feeling the emotions of your desired reality, guess what? You start to achieve your goals, because you've changed your identity. And it's not even with any action. No action from James Clear, mate. You've just sat down and done nothing. Literally, the lack of action is the thing that's going to allow you to change your identity. Oh. So that's level 1, right? You do this like simple meditation. And I recommend you do this for at least, start with 10 minutes per day. But I want you to get up to like 30 minutes per day, maybe even longer. But then level 2 meditation. Now this is where things get really saucy. Oh, I should have put level 2 here. So in your brain, you have different brainwave states. So you have beta, and you can have high beta, medium beta, and low beta. These are like fast brainwave states. So when you're stressed, when you're having a conversation, maybe when I'm filming this, I'm probably in beta. After beta, you have alpha. This is when you're daydreaming, so slightly slower. You just put fast. Then you have alpha, slightly slower. Then you have theta, and this is even slower. And then you have gamma. No, not gamma. Delta. Gamma is something, but it's not relevant for now. And that's the slowest, and that's basically unconscious, right? When you're slow and even slower, the door to the subconscious is open, right? So when you're in these brainwave states, the door to the subconscious is open. So what I mean by that is, imagine you're trying to catch a train, and the train is actually just moving. And you're standing at the station, and you have to jump onto the train to get onto it. In beta, the train is like a bullet train. It's moving so quickly, no chance of you jumping on that train. And what I mean by jumping on the train is that's how you're going to change these thoughts. Alpha and theta, the train is coming way slower. Maybe in India, you probably know that like the train sometimes doesn't stop and you just have to jump on. It just slows down at like a snail's pace. And as a result of that slowing down, you can jump on and then almost like reprogram your brain. And so when you put yourself into alpha and theta, and I'm going to explain how you can do this in a minute, you can put yourself in a position where you become the driving seat of the operating system of your behaviors, which is your subconscious, which is so powerful, right? Because if 90% of your behaviors are driven by the subconscious, and you can put yourself into a state where you can reprogram your brain to think a certain way and to feel a certain way, then you can change your behaviors just like that. And so what I'm going to teach you is how to put yourself into alpha and theta. And it's something that I've been doing quite a lot recently. So I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and for 2 hours in the morning every single day. And this is all naturally as well, and without an alarm. I'll just put theta brainwaves music on and put myself into this state, and then start to think about the emotions that I want to feel in my desired reality, or I start to feel the emotions of my desired reality. And I'm basically reprogramming my subconscious to feel a certain way every single day. So what you want to do is to put yourself in this theta state meditation, is close your eyes. So lie down, put a pillow underneath your knees, and lie down. And then what you want to do is go onto YouTube and just search theta state meditation or something like that. And then when you do that, you put your headphones in, close your eyes, and you're just going to take deep breaths. Now this might actually take some time to be able to like focus on this. That's why it's called at the advanced level. Because obviously your thoughts are still going to go haywire. But if you've been practicing level 1 for a while, and you want to get more into level 2, then this is what you got to do. So you close your eyes, and then what you want to do is just relax your whole body. And the way that I like to do it is I like to feel my body almost sinking into the bed. Now this, combined with the theta brainwaves that you've put in your earphones, is going to really slow down your brainwaves. And first you're going to go from beta to alpha, and then from alpha to theta. When you're in this theta state, it's going to feel like you're almost sleeping, and you're almost in this kind of day, like this dreamy state. And at that point, it's really magical because you can then start visualizing yourself in first person as the person that you want to be and start to feel that emotion. And so say if you want to be in really good shape, one of the emotions that you might feel is gratitude for your body. And so when you are looking and visualizing your body in this theta state, meditative state, you can visualize yourself as this new person, feel the emotions of gratitude. And now you are your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and imagination. Guess what? Your brain and your subconscious brain thinks that you are already this new person. And without taking any small actions, you've changed your identity because you're feeling like this new person. And I think it's the fastest way to change your behavior, because overnight you can do a meditation. And there's a guy called Joe Dispenza that's a big advocate for this. And he does these retreats. And people see changes within like 7 days. And obviously they're meditating every single day, so it's a really intensive retreat. But you can have quite sweeping effects on your brain by practicing this meditation. And you can do things like affirmations as well. And this is where affirmations become really powerful, because if you say to yourself, I feel confident, and you feel that within your body in this theta state, right? You feel the emotion of confidence and you learn to trigger that emotion. Your subconscious, because it doesn't know, thinks that you're already feeling like the person that you want to be. And as a result of that, your behavior changes, because behavior is just downstream of identity. If you truly believe and know that you're this person, your behavior will align to that. So if you enjoyed this video, click the link in the description if you want to work with me more closely and transform your life over the next 90 days. Remember, you are the person that you want to be. Peace.